Via.
Hi guys.
Hope everybody is doing well today. We wanted to give and share an update from Xterra Czech. I feel like this race reserves our detailed feedback on a video as opposed to me just writing it out, because there were a lot of details and experiences and emotions and thoughts that came out of this race. So I feel like we can express it a lot better via video. So before we talk about the race itself, I just want to mention that when we were traveling to the location of the race, we had about a 3.5 hour drive. Well, it actually should have only been a little less than 3 hours, but the travel to places around this area and this region, they take a little bit longer because you've got roundabouts, you've got tractors, you've got
It's all small country roads, no interstates.
Yeah, so things take a lot longer. So by the time that we arrived to the where was the area that we were staying by the forest?
The Borovalada.
Yes. So by the time that we arrived there, we woke up at 5:45. We haven't been sleeping well at all because it's been very hot. We have to have the windows open, but that also being in a city, there's a lot of noise. So we haven't been sleeping well, and we woke up at 5:45. We left at 7. We got to the place probably a little after 12. We quickly unpacked, had something to eat, and then where we were staying, we had to drive another 40 minutes to get to the town of
Prachatice.
It
was actually 45 minutes.
45 minutes for the Xterra race, which is where T2 and the finish was, but it was point to point. So first we went to the town and we picked up our packet and checked out the area, and that made us very happy. And then we had another 30 plus minutes to get to the swim location, which was a new swim location because of issues with a previous lake. So we swam in a different lake for this event, and it was even further away.
Yeah, so this was on Thursday when we wanted to pre-ride a course. It wasn't the race day.
Yeah, so we wanted to pre-ride the course. This was Thursday, and 35K, so it's about 21 miles, and we expected it to take us between 2.5 and 3 hours. So here we are. We've been on the move since 7 o'clock. We didn't start the bike till almost 2, and because it was point to point, we had another friend, Honza, with us.
And your teammate?
Your teammate of Trimarni teammate is that he had to then, we left one car in town and went to the lake so that we would have a car in both locations. So then after we even finished the ride, Corel and Honza had to go back to the lake. So
to pick up the car.
So we were actually on the go from 7 in the morning until almost 9 o'clock at night. And I have to say that Corel and I, we were just on the verge of tears. We were just so exhausted. It did make us really happy to be on the bike, and it definitely brought a lot more energy to us, but it definitely wasn't how we would envision pre-race prep. We're kind of going with the flow here during this trip. If we would have done things differently, we probably would have either stayed in the town or arrived a day early, so we didn't have to do everything
this
in one day.
It was so much more than just going to Europe and do the Xterra race or going to through the Alps. It's the whole experience and visiting family, and since we were not able to travel during the COVID times, and the last time we were here was 4 years ago, and my family actually grown because now the kids have kids, and so it's just to kind of go and visit everybody. Everyone wants to see us, but everybody has different schedules because not everybody are on the summer break. And so we have to work with everybody else's schedule, and so it's been pretty exhausting, and sleeping in different places, almost every night, and just kind of being completely out of our normal routine. We have to adapt and adjust, but it takes a lot of energy.
Yeah. So race morning, I would say if there's anything that I would do differently, I was kind of in the mindset of triathlon and giving us a lot of time. But that was for an event that had 3,000 people here at this event. It was a couple hundred people, 450 for the event. And we had way too much time there. Corral warned me about that, but he also knew that I was going to be a little bit nervous with it being my first event, and he was okay with arriving a bit early. But now looking back, I know that we definitely did not need as much time as I anticipated for. What I was accounting for was 40-minute drive to the town, parking, setting up the transition area in T2, then driving the 30 plus minutes to the lake, parking, and then setting up our transition area in T1, doing a warm-up jog, getting in the water. So I counted for all of that. And although it did take a lot of time, we probably could have pushed things back for about an hour. The nice thing was that the race didn't start till about 12:30. So we were in no rush in the morning time. We didn't have to get up early. I think we got up at 7 o'clock. It's been a little bit interesting having to improvise with different pre-race foods. I will say that, with this being my first Xterra, I didn't really know what to do necessarily and what my body would need, but that just also shows that it takes time to learn these things, and every event is a learning experience. So once we did get to the venue, we decided to go for a little spin on the bike, just make sure the bikes were good and kind of loosen out the legs. And then we checked in the transition area. It was kind of a smaller transition area, kind of a little tight, especially with all the mountain bikes because
the wide handlebars.
And yeah.
So it's kind of like wedged into each other.
Yeah. But we had our numbers next to each other, so that was kind of nice. And I kind of looked at what other people were doing and kind of figure out what I should be doing with laying out my transition area. There were a few things different in this event. They wanted you to have the majority of your stuff in a gear bag, and then once you finish the swim, you put your swim stuff in that gear bag, and they'll take it to the transition area in town. I had my helmet hanging on the handlebars.
I put mine on the ground.
You put on yours on the ground, and then I had my sunglasses in the helmet. I also had my cycling gloves on the bar ends of the bike so that I could just put them on as I was running. And then inside the bag, I had my cycling shoes, my socks, and my hydration pack. So once Corral's like, oh, let's go for a swim. And they had announced that morning when we kind of knew it that it wasn't going to be wetsuit legal because it'd been very warm in the area. And this was a very small, kind of like a pond for the swim. And so we were kind of expecting, okay, not wetsuit legal. It's going to be pretty warm. It's going to be really comfortable. It's, almost noon in the afternoon. And Corral dipped his toes in and he said, oh, it's a little bit cold. And they said that it was 22 degrees Celsius, which converts to about 71, 72 degrees.
71.
Yeah. So that was non-wetsuit legal. And I think it felt a little bit colder than that.
And it felt colder than that. And just to kind of put it in perspective, Ironman, the cutoff is what, like 76? 76. So this was 71 and it was non-wetsuit legal. And it actually felt colder than that. So, the purpose of us warming up in the water, as soon as you get out of the water after the warm up, we both were just shivering for a pretty long time, right?
We should have brought a towel.
Shake it off. And also to our surprise, they also announced that swim skins are not allowed.
Only in the long distance.
Yeah. And they said if you wear the swim skin, then you have to keep it on for the rest of the race. You cannot, shed anything in the transition. So there was another okay, that's new. We didn't expect that, and we brought actually our wetsuit and swim skins to have it.
And we warmed up in our swim skins.
We warm up in the swim skin, but then we have to just take it off and basically use our regular Trimarni gear, the race kit to use it for a swim. So we be prepared whenever you do international races because their governing body, like the Czech triathlon, the rules are just different than what you are used to with a USAT or Ironman. So, but there's no point of being upset or argue with anybody. You just go with the flow because that's their rules.
Yeah.
Same thing when we did Challenge Prague several years ago when the water was extremely cold because it was in the river Vltava in the middle of the Prague, and the river is flowing quite a bit, although this was a loop that you go around the island. so it was not really moving as much there, but it was extremely cold, and it was, what it was like 60 or below, right?
Yeah.
And so we thought, oh, we can use our booties, and they said, no booties allowed. So just so be prepared, and don't expect that everything will be the same that you are used to.
Yeah. So they had listed that the pros were going at 12:20 and 12:22, and then the age groupers the pros would start at noon, and the age groupers would start at like 12:20, 12:22.
So they had two waves of the age group athletes. The first wave was male 18 to 39, and the second group was basically everybody else.
Yeah. But then as the pros went off, and there was about 70 pros total, they split the men and the women. When the pros went off, they told us that we would not be starting until all the pros had left the lake and onto the bike. So that delayed things about 10 minutes. And we were pretty cold.
So it was like 20, because we were supposed to start 12:22 and we started like 12:40.
Yeah, so we were cold, and it was a little bit cloudy at that time. So I was kind of shivering, but once it was time for our wave to finally go, and I put my feet in the water, it's just kind of like, okay, just kept telling myself, okay, I'm going to warm up. It had been a very long time since I've done a mass swim start.
Mm-hmm.
So with 100 people lining up together, I didn't really realize how much combat is involved with that.
The thing is that it doesn't really matter if you start with 100 people or 2,000, because the people surrounding you, it's still the same kind of amount of people, and the contact is the same. So for this small race, that 150 or whatever it was in our wave, it was plenty.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of bottling, and we started sort of in the water, kind of like try to balance on the slippery rocks underneath our feet, and the water was about a little bit above or mid thighs, something like that, right?
Yep.
And that's how we were waiting for the cannon to go off, and then we started.
And once we went off, I warmed up fast because I was working really hard to just get out as fast as I could. And there was moments during the swim that I got a little bit cold, but overall I was comfortable, but it definitely required a strong effort. And it was 3 loops, and you got out at every loop. You just got out and right back in on the sand. That was kind of nice and interesting, just to have something break it up instead of one long 1,500 meter swim, which was a little longer than 1,500 meters.
I was glad for the loops because my goggles were sort of leaking, so I could always just during those few steps just to clear it out and put it back on.
Yeah, but it was pretty intense. I swam as hard as I could. I kind of had to, just because of the people around me, and I knew I kind of had to try to get whatever. I knew that this was my first event, and I needed to be realistic with it being a European championship, but I'm also competitive, and I wanted to compete to the best of my ability. So I was going to take advantage of my strengths as much as I could, and I knew that swimming is one of them. So I just tried to swim as hard as I could. Once I got out of the swim, and I was breathing very hard, and much harder effort than I would do in an Ironman. So from there on, I don't think my heart rate ever went down. It was definitely a different feeling to be anaerobic for so long. I got into transition area, and I transitioned pretty quickly. And I was actually looking forward to getting on my bike. When I got on my bike, just shortly after, Carell ended up passing me. I swam about 2 minutes faster than him. So he passed me on what was our first of many long uphills.
And I mean long.
Do you want to talk about some of these hills?
Yeah, I mean they were,
or maybe just summarize the course.
Yeah, so the course basically for over the half of the course, it felt like you were just climbing, and it was just going long and steep. And when I say steep, I mean really steep, like 25% or more sometimes in the woods, that you are in the easiest gear and just like barely moving, and being off-road, it's a lot more tricky than on the pavement, because you are there is not much traction, so you have to manage your traction. You have to keep the weight on the rear wheel, but at the same time you cannot put it too much weight in the rear wheel, otherwise the front wheel will be popping off the ground. So you just kind of keep on balancing. And now Do you have some obstacles that you still have to clear even when you're going uphill? So basically, to sum it up, you keep going up, 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 then you go up some more, and it gets steeper. And when you just think that there's no way, there has to be finished, it turns and goes steeper, more rougher, and higher up. So that's kind of how it was, and it was just insane. It wasn't as technical as what we are used to riding our mountain bikes. Mostly ride on the single tracks with technical stuff. It was a lot of these fire roads and in the woods and
Grassy fields.
yeah, grassy fields and stuff like that. There are a few sections of single track, but mostly it was more open that you can pass people if you need to, or you get past. But it was just so physically demanding, and it's something that neither of us really anticipated. That we knew it was going to be hard, but that it would be this hard, I had no idea. It was honestly, the hardest extra course in terms of the physical demand.
Yeah. And to be honest, we didn't specifically train for this event. This was just kind of a bonus to take advantage of this opportunity that we were already in Czech, and that I wanted to do my first Xterra event, and I felt ready for it. And so that's just how we landed into this event. But had we really focused on this, we would have trained very differently for the 3,500 feet of elevation gain and 21 miles, a lot more power, a lot more anaerobic work, as opposed to technical abilities, which is something that I'm still continuing to work on. But I didn't find the course challenging. There were several times I got off my bike just because I knew it was
challenging in terms of technicality.
Yeah, there was one or two instances where I had planned to get off my bike just because I knew I wouldn't be able to get over a certain feature. And really it was more because I was so tired. It wasn't that the feature was challenging. There was maybe just one that was in between a few rocks and I couldn't really navigate that, but it was just that my legs were so tired to take that effort and then get over something was just exhausting. And we even noticed when we pre-rode the course and we would stop and talk and then do a feature, it felt easy. But then when you're have been climbing 20+% for 5 minutes, and then you have to go over a feature, your legs are just fried. I mean, just imagine having to jump over something after you've just sprinted for 5 minutes.
And then basically, so when we conquer some of these long climbs, and then finally it was a time for nice kind of like a fun technical descent that we rode the other day. But it requires you to really load up the quads, because you sort of like you put the seat down and you load up the quads in the kind of squatted position, ready position. You really don't want to do that because the quads are just on fire, right?
Sometimes I just have to sit down and your heels are down and you're kind of putting all the weight in your legs, but your legs are throbbing because they just work so hard. And now you have to really focus on this downhill. But and some of the downhills were pretty gnarly. They were very rocky and a lot of different terrain features on them. And they were fast and steep and long. But I felt pretty comfortable on them. I was very happy that I felt confident. Nothing scared me throughout the entire ride. I will say that nutrition was a little interesting. I have no issues with nutrition in long distance events. But because my heart rate was so high, nutrition just felt like it wasn't sitting as well. And that just kind of reminded me why efficiency is so important in long distance racing, and why when you do short course racing, you just don't take in as much because you can't. And so I've really mastered being economical for 16 years, building an aerobic engine that I can compete for 140.6 miles as efficiently as possible. And therefore my nutrition is able to absorb really well because I'm not using a lot of blood or a lot of energy for my heart and my muscles just because of the economy. But here, you can't go easy. I mean, there's no way to go easy. I'm huffing and puffing and legs are burning and heart rate's up. And then you have to try to take nutrition for a 2+ hour bike or 3.5 hour race. It's very challenging. So it's something I'll need to continue to work on. We both had hydration packs, which a lot of people didn't wear them, but for us, it was just a no-brainer just because we can just grab a straw and drink whenever we want without having to take our hands off the bars and grab a bottle. So once and then there was also some sections on the bike course that I had to get off just because there was people ahead of me. And I think that was one thing that I was a little nervous about with this race was just, you know, other people on the course, but my mind kind of went to ease once I got out there because it did kind of break itself up throughout. There were sections where you could pass people or you would just hold back a little bit and then you could pass. There was one area where two guys were yelling at each other, I think maybe in French, because one guy wanted to pass and stay on his bike and the other was walking his bike. And then they were yelling at each other as they were continuing to ride. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then we finished on kind of this gravel pump track type thing. So that was kind of fun. The course had a little bit of everything, but the big hills were kind of in the first half, and then the more technical features and more climbing were in the second half. Anything you want to mention about your bike? How did you feel like you were competing with other people? Were you passing people? Were you?
Yeah,
I'll just mention real fast that the girls out there were incredibly strong. I thought maybe I could be competitive, but I think with this type of course, I thought maybe my strengths of climbing would suit me, but they just had so much more power on these roads and just much better handling skills on some of those sections. So I stayed competitive, but and I never gave up on myself, but I definitely wasn't in the running for a podium spot.
Yeah. So if you look at it, the field wasn't as big as you would see in the Ironman races or some of the other events, but because it was the European Championship, the people that showed up, they were also good. They were really, really good. So you may see an age group with 10 people in it, but everybody's good. So that was the other kind of difficult part. And for me, the bike, it was extremely challenging for the first little bit over the half when we were just keep on climbing. My lower back was just locking up and it hurt so much more. So it just kind of I didn't really feel my legs hurting because my back hurt so much, and it's just from that torquing it so hard on those steep uphills for so long. So it's just kind of seized up. But then the second half it loosened up a bit more because there was more opportunity to do some downhills and move around and stuff. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was extremely painful, but I really enjoyed it, and I was glad. It was glad that we pre-ride the course, so we knew exactly where we were. So as I was nearing the end of the bike course, I was mentally getting ready for having a clean and fast transition and get ready for the run, which neither of us knew what was ahead of us. We didn't check the run course, just didn't have a time for it logistically. So that was like the big unknown and wondering what's ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that we didn't know what was coming ahead because we probably wouldn't have slept because of nightmares of what's coming. So I transitioned pretty quickly, and I was just kind of telling myself, all right, I'll just run as strong as I can and see what happens. It was kind of cool with the transition area in the town because there was lots of people cheering in the main square with cobblestones. And so you're biking into the town on cobblestones. And that was just kind of really cool. And I think with a lot of these European and international races, there's always that really exciting part of being in a town or a village. There's some aspect of that that's kind of different than like a city in the US. So when I started running, I immediately got out of the transition area and I had one flask with me for nutrition, and I poured some water on me because it was getting a little bit warm. I was not cold at all on the bike. And I started running and I see Corel coming down because
you forgot to mention that you start running uphill
out of the town, and the bikers are still coming down. At that point, there weren't a lot of bikers left, but bikers coming down, and then you're running up on the other side of the road, and you just keep running up and up and up what you just
significant hill.
What you just descended down.
Nothing was about to come.
Yeah, it was probably over 10%, and you're just running. And so I'm running, and it was 2 5K loops for 10K total. And I see Corel.
10.6.
Yeah, and I see Corel coming down. And instead of Corel being like, hey, good job, great, yay, you say.
I said, it's brutal, get ready.
And I'm pretty sure you were just preparing yourself for the second loop. So I was like, okay, well, I don't know what he means by that, but I guess maybe it's just hilly. So I run up the hill, and actually I felt okay. I mean, my legs were tired, but actually it was nice running uphill because I didn't need to really make that propulsion forward. It's just like keep your legs shuffling uphill. And then after about a mile or so, or half a mile, you get off road, and then you see it and you see people walking. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't need to walk. And I'm running. I'm like, oh, I will need to walk. And it just shoots up.
And then basically the walk turns into a crawl, and you try to hang on. It's basically the trail would go like a zigzag like this, and you go straight up. And it looks like it was, I don't know, I was just made up the number, but let's say that it went over 35%, maybe 40%. It was just straight up, and you try to grab on the tree and crawl just to get up there.
Yeah.
It was insane. I
Yeah.
don't think we will ever see a course like this in the United States.
Yeah.
And because everybody's winner, and it needs to be easy, but it was quite an experience.
Yeah, you couldn't help to just laugh. So
Yeah.
it was probably a half mile.
Actually, I was laughing.
Yeah, it was probably a half mile of a lot of hiking and crawling. And there were sections in between where you could jog for like 5 steps, and then you would hit another wall. And most of the trail was off-road. There was just short sections on the asphalt, but it was primarily off-road. A lot of single track, like something that you would mountain bike on. So it was very twisty, curvy. So it was about half of the course you were climbing, another half of the course it was just zigzag downhill with a few little bumps. And I actually looked forward to the second loop just because I knew that it was just one more time I had to go through this. And I was actually looking forward to the hiking section because I didn't have to run anymore and I could just hike.
It was just so hard to restart the run after that.
It was very hard. I would find myself just walking.
I want to walk a little bit more.
Yeah, nope, you need to start running because you can run now. So that was kind of, it was really challenging. And I just felt like
it was over 170. I never see it.
I don't think my heart, I mean, I could hear myself breathing heavy. I could feel my heart pumping out of my chest the entire race. So for 3 hours and 45 minutes, my heart rate was elevated and I could feel that. I was feeling empty, like your body's still going. It's almost like you're in another like reality, like my body's still moving, but I'm not here with my body. It just very different than what I'm used to in the Ironman, which is just more pure fatigue, as opposed to this was just physically, I am empty and everything hurts. So once I did my second loop, I saw Honza, which was really fun to catch up with him on the run. And then as I was finishing, Carell was there to cheer for me. And what was really cool, at the end of each of the loops, you run in this little tiny little hallway between buildings. If you put your elbows out, you would hit both the walls. So it was tiny and you just kind of go like,
to squeeze in and then like make this, a turn.
Yeah, like this and that, and then under a little tunnel. So that was kind of cool.
There's all those historic buildings and these little pathways. It was really cool.
And then once I did finally reach the finish line, although I had some ups and downs with, how I felt and being competitive as I am and just how I was performing, I just needed to take things into perspective. This is my first Xterra. I didn't crash. I didn't fall. I reached the finish line. We didn't really prepare or train specifically for this. We've had such a busy travel, such a busy triathlon race season. So I was really happy to reach that finish line. Really happy to hear that Carell was third in his age group at this European Championship, which was just phenomenal. And then to see our other Czech friends there at the finish line was great. And the after party was great. There was a DJ and the award ceremony, and then we had to make the long drive back to our little cottage. So in all, if I would have to summarize it, it was much more physically exhausting than I ever thought Xterra would be. But then again, I am also learning what Xterra is all about, and that's no two races are the same. Mm-hmm. Every race has its own specifics. I don't think that there will ever be an easy Xterra course. You might say that a course is easier than something else, but every course has its challenges. And I really...
there are also no standard times, like when people are kind of used to the certain times for half, for full or Olympic. This is just, every race is different.
Yeah. I'm in awe of what the professionals can do and how fast they can go. I'm in awe of how fast and strong and the technical abilities of the other athletes. But what I really loved about this is it was different for me. And I didn't have to be competitive in terms of having a certain outcome or a placement. The achievement was me reaching that finish line and what can I do to get to that finish line. So I'm excited. I want to do more Xterra races and more off-road triathlons just for different opportunities.
Yeah, one of the highlights for me was just, of course, doing the Xterra in my home country, and the way how we were treated almost like a celebrities, right? A local TV reporter from the Czech TV, he knew us or knew of us, and we actually met in other like Ironman races. He usually does the report for Czech TV from the Corona World Championship, and he just recently went to St. George, and we let him stay in our house. So we kind of knew each other, but he saw us, he got excited, and he started announcing, through the microphone, who we are and why we are there, and really like a celebrity. So it was kind of like really, really neat. And then even for the award ceremony, they have really, really nice podium with like a shooting smoke and music and everything. And when they announced me, I said we have a unique situation. This racer registered as a American, but we all know that he is from Czech. So we will announce him as a the racer from the Czech, and then they announced me, and it was really just cool and different experience. And it was just kind of like a big show because the race, like Mari said, it started in the afternoon and went into the late night. After the award ceremony, they have a big party going on. We didn't stay for that much, just were tired and hungry and went home. But they have really, good food, right? Post-race food was really good. And just the whole experience being in a very, very historic town in the middle of the town and the historic square and experiencing it was so good.
Yeah. And how about that guy that talked to you that was chasing you down during the race?
Yeah, so there was another racer that I never met before. And, since it was a mass start, you don't have to just sprint with nobody, hoping that, because it's the typical Ironman these days, time trial start, you don't know who started, so you fight for every second. So as I'm running down and just kind of look, and there's nobody that I can really catch and nobody that is behind me. So I'm just, I'm still running fast, but I'm not killing myself. And then in one of the last turns, right before that really, really narrow street, I just kind of look back and I see somebody behind me just like huffing and puffing. So I was like, oh, I have to pick it up. So I picked it up and managed to stay ahead and actually sprinted with another guy. It just happened that I caught up another guy right in the finishing chute, and then I got him. So I moved up one more spot there. And right after the sprint finish, the guy who was chasing me, he came up to me and, he said, man, the typical chip chat after the race, how, he tried to get me and stuff. And then, he said, yeah, I just started the Xterra last year. So I said, I did the same thing. I was like, well, but your name is very well known here in Czech triathlon, so I know who you are. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah. I just want to mention, in a lot of sports, especially on the on-road triathlon that we're used to, there seems to be like a standard of what's expected. And I'm not talking about rules, but just like how people think they should look, how they should act, how they should perform, the type of gear. And it's so easy to compare yourself or to feel less than. And, I don't think any of that is true. And I don't believe in that. I think everyone should just focus on themselves and what works well for you. But I think what I see in Xterra from watching Corel race and then having experienced myself is you're not so worried of what other people are doing, because you have to focus on yourself or else you're going to fall or you're not going to get over to the finish line to get over an obstacle. So you really have to focus on yourself, and you might be able to get over an obstacle on your own, but there's other people there. So you have to get off your bike, and it doesn't say anything less about you as an athlete. So I think that's something that was very welcoming and refreshing in the Xterra event, is that, it doesn't matter your level or your experience or your fitness or what you look like, everybody is just focused on themselves. And I think sometimes with the on-road triathlon, we're so focused on what we think other people think of us. And I didn't feel that way at all at the Xterra.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it was a great event. Next up, we have our hardest event that we will ever participate in, and that is the Haute Route Alps, and that will be on Sunday, starting in Nice, France. And so we will be giving some updates from that. All right, take care.
All right, cheers.